Okay, you can begin.
Okay, so good morning, everyone, and welcome. We are doing chapter 12. Next slide, please. And this title is Leadership, Power, and Influence. I am Sherry Ann Lindsay. My group members are Christine Sudan and Sean Brown. Next slide, please. Okay, so the concept that we are going to talk about today is foundational leadership, charismatic leadership, transactional leadership, power, influence, and leadership, responses to leadership, power, the role of dependency, control over resources, sources of leader power, increasing power through policy, tactics for asserting leader influence, ethical considerations in using power and politics. Next slide, please. So the concepts of leadership, power, and influence are more critical than right? And this chapter dives into the impact of these elements on how effective the leaders and the overall success of their teams. Now, leadership is not merely about occupying a position of authority, right? It's about encompassing the ability to inspire, to motivate, and guide individuals towards shared goals. Now, at the heart of this process really lies the intricate relationship between power and influence, which also shapes how leaders interact with their followers. And understanding the various sources of power, whether it be legitimate, reward, coercive, expert, or referent, which my colleague will get into later on in the topics, is essential for any leader seeking to foster a collaborative environment. Moreover, the ability to influence others ethically and responsibly is the hallmark of effective leadership. So this chapter really emphasizes that, true leaders really harness their power not only to achieve organizational objectives, but also to cultivate trust and engagement and commitment among their teams. Next slide, please. So the first topic we're going to talk about today is transformational leadership. Now, transformational leadership is a leadership style that focuses really on inspiring and motivating their followers to achieve their full potential and also to exceed their own self-interest for the benefit of the group or the organization. It really emphasizes the importance of strong vision, personal connections, and the development of both individuals and the organization as a whole. Now, leaders in this style emphasizes collaboration, collective goals, and development of a strong organizational culture. And I'll tell you how. First, the idealized influence. Now, they act as role models, inspiring trust and respect, right? And this demonstrating ethical behavior and high standards. Now, people admire and trust these leaders, often imitating their values and actions. Then there's inspirational motivation. Now, transformational leaders articulate a compelling vision that inspires and motivates followers. So they communicate optimism and enthusiasm, encouraging commitment to shared goals. The next one is intellectual stimulation, where the leaders encourage innovation and creativity, prompting their followers to really think critically and explore new ideas. So they create a kind of safe environment for experimentation and risk taking. And the last one is individualized consideration. Now, leaders really pay attention to individual followers, right? Their needs, and they provide personalized support. So they mentor and they coach, fostering personal development and growth. Next slide, please. So some components of transformational leadership, they have the impact on followers by increased motivation and morale. Now, transformational leaders inspire followers to go beyond their self-interest, right? Resulting in a higher motivation and job satisfaction. They also have enhanced performance. So by fostering a sense of purpose and commitment, which lead to improved performance and productivity. And then there's development of future leaders. Now this style really nurtures, the next generation of leaders by focusing on mentorship and growth. Then there's organizational outcomes. Now cultural change in this aspect really can shift organizational culture towards innovation and collaboration. Then there's adaptability. They help organizations navigate change by instilling a shared vision and commitment among employees. And then there's the long-term success. By fostering loyalty, commitment, transformational leaders contribute to sustainable organizational success. And then the other one is practical implications by vision crafting. Now, leaders focus on crafting and communicating a clear and really compelling vision. There's also empowerment. They encourage team members to take initiative and be involved in decision-making process. And then there's the feedback mechanism. They implement systems for regular feedback and open communication to support and individual development. So overall, transformational leadership is more than just achieving goals. It's about transforming followers and organizations through inspiration, empowerment, and a shared vision. So this style really fosters a dynamic environment where both leaders and their followers can thrive, leading to meaningful change and improved performance. Next slide, please. Then we have charismatic leadership. Now, this style of leadership is where the leader's personal qualities and behaviors inspire and motivate followers through emotional connections and a compelling vision. Now, this form of leadership really relies heavily on leaders' ability to communicate effectively, connect emotionally, and create an environment where they feel empowered and valued. Next slide, please. So some key elements of this is their personal qualities, right? And one of the qualities are charisma. Now, the leader really possesses a unique charm and appeal that draws followers in. So this often includes traits such as confidence and enthusiasm and eloquence, right? And then there's the emotional intelligence side of the personal characteristics, where these leaders are often highly attuned to their emotions of others, enabling them to respond effectively to their needs, their followers' needs and feelings. Then another element is vision. Charismatic leaders really articulate a clear and inspiring vision for the future. They communicate this vision in a way that resonates deeply with followers, creating a shared sense of purpose. So this vision really often transcends day-to-day tasks, appealing to the followers' values and aspirations, right? And then there's influence through communication. The charismatic leaders really excel in verbal and non-verbal communication. They use compelling languages and stories and symbolism to convey their message and motivate their audiences. So they often employ rhetorical techniques to inspire and engage followers, making their vision feel attainable and significant. Then there's the emotional connection. Now, these leaders forge strong emotional bonds with their followers. So by expressing empathy and passion and authority, they really create an atmosphere of trust and loyalty. And this emotional connection really encourages their followers to go beyond their self-interest and to commit to the leader's vision. Then there's the role modeling. Now, these charismatic leaders, they demonstrate behaviors and values that they really expect from their followers. So they embody the principles of their vision, serving as role models and inspiring followers to emulate them. Next slide, please. So here are some key components of charismatic leadership, right? They have the impact on their followers. So same as a transformational leader, they enhance motivation. Now, followers are often inspired to achieve higher levels of performance due to their emotional connection to the leader and the vision they present. Then there's a stronger commitment. The loyalty that a charismatic leader really invokes can result in increased commitment to organizational goals and values. Then there's the collective identity. Now, charismatic leaders help their followers to develop a sense of belonging and collective identity, which, fostering their team unity. But even though they have all these great qualities and components, there's also potential challenges. And I'll tell you how. Their followers can be over reliant on the leader. What I mean by that? Well, followers may become too dependent on a charismatic leader, right? Leading to a lack of initiative or critical thinking among team members. There's also the risk of manipulation, right? The emotional appeal of a charismatic leader can sometimes be misused. And you would see that right here in Trinidad in politics or anywhere as a matter of fact, right? So this leads to manipulation or the promotion of self-serving agendas rather than common good. And then there's also a succession issue, right? Where if a charismatic leader just leaves the organization, then the organization will struggle to maintain motivation and cohesion without their presence, right? So, in all, a charismatic leader is a powerful and influential style. Really relies on the leaders to their personal attributes, vision, and ability to connect emotionally and with their followers. So while it can drive exceptional motivation and commitment, it also poses risk related to dependency and potential ethical concerns. So overall, effective charismatic leaders really must have that balance, to influence with a focus of collective well-being in their organization and their members. Now I have a question. Can you go to the next slide, please? Does anybody here know these people? One or all of them? Anybody? Can anybody name any of these?
Oprah Winfrey.
Okay, great.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh,
Barack
Wonderful.
Obama.
that make you feel
Nice.
something.
Lovely. Right. He was a past president. Anybody else?
Miss Paula.
Well, Brian Lara.
Right.
No,
Great.
Paula me.
Lovely. Very good. So you all are correct. And why I have these pictures up here? So these people, some way, in some form, have charismatic leadership or transformational leadership, or maybe both. So I'll go into this. So we have Oprah Winfrey. Now she's a prime example of transformational leadership, right? By inspiring vision. Now she has consistently advocated for personal growth, empowerment, and social change. So through her platforms, she really encourages individuals to pursue their passion and improve their lives. Then there's empowerment and support. She really has also invested in various initiatives aimed at education, right? Particularly for girls. I know she opened a school just particularly for girls, right? And has created opportunities for others to share their stories and their voices. Now, she also does mentorship, right? She has mentored countless individuals in the entertainment industry and beyond, fostering their development and encouraging them to reach their potential. Then there's the cultural impact. Now, her emphasis on open end dialogue about difficult topics such as mental health, race, and poverty. She also even opened up about her own struggles as a child where she was raped. It really has transformed societal conversations and inspired collective actions. Then there's the former president, Mr. Barack Obama. He exemplifies charismatic leadership with his personal magnetism, his ability to connect with people through his eloquent speeches and calm demeanor really draws others, by creating a strong emotional bond. Then he's an inspirational communicator. His speeches are often resonates deeply with characterized by powerful rhetoric, that inspires hope and change. So phrases like, yes, we can, we all know him by that, become a rallying cry for many. Then he's a visionary leader. So Mr. Obama really articulates a vision of unity and progresses, encouraging Americans to believe that their collective potential and work together become better for our future. And then there's the emotional connection where his personal story and relatable nature really fosters a sense of trust and connection, making him a beloved figure among many. So both Mr. Obama and Oprah really exemplifies those qualities of transformational and charismatic leadership. But now we go on to Her Excellency, the past president, Ms. Paula Weeks. Now she is notably as the first female president of Trinidad and Tobago, and her leadership style embodies transformational qualities. Here's how. By inspiring vision, she has emphasized the importance of nation building and unity, often calling for collective efforts to address national challenges. She's also empowering. She has championed various social causes, including women's rights and youth development, encouraging citizens to actively participate in governance and community service. Then there's mentorship. I don't know if a lot of you know, but as a leader, she focuses on nurturing future leaders, promoting educational initiatives, and fostering an inclusive environment. Then there's Brian Lara. Now, if you're a cricket fan like me, he's one of the greatest cricketers in history of sport. Now, he exemplifies charismatic leadership by his personal magnitude. He has exceptional skills and style of cricket on the field that captivates fans all over the world by drawing immense admiration and loyalty from his followers. Then he is also an inspirational communicator. He has often inspired cricketers with his stories of hard work, dedication, and resilience, really encouraging them to pursue their dreams. Then there's the emotional connection. His ability to connect with his fans on and off the field has really created a lasting legacy in fostering a sense of pride and identity among everyone. So these examples, to me, illustrate how transformational and charismatic leadership can really manifest and influence the world. Next slide, please. So now we're going to talk about transformational versus transactional leadership. Now, these two types of leadership are fundamental styles that can significantly influence the dynamics within an organization. Now, as mentioned before, and I'm going to reiterate, transformational leadership is a focus on inspiring and motivating their followers, right, to exceed their own self-interest for the sake of the organization. Right? These leaders foster a compelling vision, promote innovation, and prioritize the personal and professional growth of their team members. Now, they create a sense of shared purpose and engage in meaningful communication, right? And this results in higher levels of commitment and creativity among their followers. So this approach is really particularly effective in environments requiring change and adaptation, as it cultivates a culture of collaboration and empowerment. On the other hand, transactional leadership is more a structured and results-oriented kind of approach. You know, transactional leaders really focus on the exchange relationship between themselves and their followers, really relying on rewards and penalties to motivate their performance. So this style really emphasizes clear rules, established processes, and the achievement of specific goals. So transactional leadership is effective in situations where tasks are routine and well-defined, you know, as it ensures efficiency and accountability. So while transformational leadership drives engagement and innovation, transactional leadership really provides the structure necessary for operational success, and understanding these differences is really crucial, right? To seek enhancement to the effectiveness and guiding of teams and achieving organizational goals, right? Now, there are four key areas which I will discuss with you now. The first one is development of leader. With a transformational leader, they really focus on developing their followers into leaders by granting autonomy and empowering them to manage their own behaviors, right? Leaders unite people around a shared mission and encourage awareness of key issues, fostering productive change. While transactional leadership now, Their primary emphasizes mainly on the status quo, right, and managing performance through clear directives. Now, leaders really focus on supervising tasks and ensuring compliance with established procedures rather than actively developing their followers into leaders. Then there's elevating needs. Now, transformational leaders really helps their followers move from basic needs to the higher psychological needs like self-esteem and self-actualization. So leaders prioritize personal growth, linking individual development to the organization's mission, right? Whereas transactional leadership, they concentrate on fulfilling basic needs through rewards and penalties, right? So while ensuring that the foundational needs are met, it does not prioritize personal growth or higher psychological needs, focusing instead on immediate performance outcome. Then there's collective purpose. Now, the transformational leader really inspires followers to prioritize the collective good over personal interests, fostering trust and admiration. So these leaders really motivate individuals to exceed their expectations and embrace change for the greater organizational mission. Transactional leadership now. Them there's emphasis on individual performance and compliance with established goals. So followers are motivated primarily by rewards and consequences rather than a collective purpose, leading to a more individualistic approach. Then there's the vision for the future. Transformational leaders, they articulate a compelling vision for the future that makes the challenges of change worthwhile. So leaders engage their followers in sharing their vision, providing a clear sense of purpose that motivates action. While the transactional leadership now lacks a forward-looking vision, it focuses more on immediate results and operational efficiency. So change is typically reactive, occurring only when necessary to achieve short-term objectives. So this comparison really highlights how transactional leadership is more focused on management and compliance, while transformational leadership emphasizes development, inspiration, and long-term vision. I now pass you on to the next presenter, Sean.
Thank you, Sherry-Ann. So Sherry-Ann touched a bit on charismatic leadership, but I'm going to go a bit further and talk about it because it's so interesting. Actually, it's amazing. It's actually a very amazing leadership style. So many transformational leaders have charisma, right? Charisma is defined as a compelling attractiveness or charm that can inspire devotion in others. Now, the key word there is devotion. It is a seemingly innate, I say seemingly innate, ability to be able to influence others and attract their attention and admiration. Charismatic leadership and transformational leadership may overlap a bit, right? This is what Sherry-Ann was explaining as well. They may overlap. They both tend to have enthusiastic energies, strong follower support, and a vision for change. However, and this is what makes charismatic leadership stand out, charismatic leadership goes further in that the followers are actually in complete awe of their leader. The followers tend to be submissive and develop a deep devotion towards that leader. If the leader is an exclusively transformational type of leader, then he would just have good follower support and good engagement from the followers. Nothing with deep devotion. Next slide, please. Right, so charisma has been described as a fire that ignites energy and commitment in followers, causing them to produce results that go above and beyond the call of duty. This type of leader has the ability to inspire, motivate, to get people to do more than they would normally do. And that is despite obstacles or personal sacrifices. They forget about themselves and how they could get in trouble just for the sake of following this leader. which is why I say it's amazing leadership style. A famous quote says, if I had to talk about a charismatic leader, I would say he persuades people. He persuades subordinates, superiors, anybody really, to do the things they'd rather not. People charge over the hill for him, run through fire, and walk barefoot on broken glass. Next slide, please. So let's look at some famous charismatic leaders. Before I talk about these people, can anybody tell me who they are? Let's try and name them.
Mother Teresa. Yes, Mandela.
Yeah,
Mahatma Gandhi. Um, of course, Martin Luther
Martin
King.
Luther King,
God.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Donald Trump.
Donald Trump, and Elon Musk.
Mm-hmm. And who's the last one?
I can't remember his name.
Elon Musk.
Elon
Yes,
Musk.
yes, Elon. Yes, very good. Right? You all know stuff. You all know your people. Yeah, this is Elon Musk. So these are some famous charismatic leaders, right? So to talk a little bit about them, Mother Teresa was a Catholic nun who founded the Missionaries of Charity. She devoted her entire life to serving the poorest and most vulnerable people in India. Next is Nelson Mandela, a groundbreaking leader who fought against racial segregation. And for that, he ended up spending 27 years in prison. But in the end, he became South Africa's first Black president, advocating for reconciliation of the nations and human rights. Thirdly, we have Mahatma Gandhi, the legendary leader who led India to independence from British rule because it was a struggle for them to get the independence from Britain. But how he did this is what's interesting. He did this with a powerful philosophy of non-violent resistance. And it is his commitment to peace that continues to inspire other leaders across the globe, actually. Which takes us to Martin Luther King, who himself said he was inspired by Gandhi. He was a civil rights leader, which occurred would be in the 1950s in America. It was a movement where he was a leader and he gave powerful speeches to advocate for a non-violent activism against racial segregation in America. Because at that time, racism was getting so bad, he emerged as a leader for the people. And like Gandhi, non-violent. In more modern times, in the second row now, we have Donald Trump, a businessman and the 45th president of the United States. He is known for his unorthodox approach to politics and his willingness to stand for the common man. He has made a significant impact on America's political landscape, and he's very well liked. We have a lot of fans and followers. Lastly, we recognize tech visionary Elon Musk, a renowned entrepreneur and innovator who has revolutionized the electric vehicle and space industries. So I have a question for the class, right? Anybody could unmute and answer. Why do you think these people are considered charismatic? Like, if I have to rephrase, right? It'd be like this. What is one trait or one thing you would observe in a charismatic person and say, oh, he's charismatic or she's charismatic? What's that trait you think they would have? Nobody? Oh my gosh. To me, I would say certain things like, anybody want to try to answer?
I would say the attitude that they possess, the fact that they're positive, and
Mm-hmm.
what occurs, they continue to fight to ensure that that dream is material.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And they have a positive attitude and an aura about themselves.
Mm-hmm.
Even though Donald Trump is special, he still have a kind of welcoming kind of aura. Wait,
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's right.
I
That's
would
what. That's,
say
go ahead.
I would say a charismatic leader is a very likable,
Mm-hmm.
like the way they speak.
Mm-hmm.
I do think about even Obama. A lot of people seem to like him because when he speaks, he doesn't speak boring. He
Yeah.
speaks in a way that everybody could relate to him and listen to him and laugh and say, yeah, 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 and cheer along and support him and so on. So
Mm-hmm.
when I think about a charismatic leader, I think about somebody who's likable.
That's right. Y'all hit the nail on the head. That is it. That's a key thing about them. They're likable. Now that's one of their traits, right? So, and honestly, all these people here on this side, all amazing people, and they're worth being studied, right? So let's learn a little bit more about their traits. Basically, what has been observed in them. We'll learn about some of their characteristics that are not as obvious, like ones you wouldn't notice off the bat. But let's see. Let's see. Let's go. Okay, next slide, please. Okay, so first we're going to explain a little bit more about charismatic leaders, right? We get to understand them a bit better. What charismatic leaders have is an emotional impact on people. They are able to appeal to both the heart and the mind. These leaders tend to speak emotionally, and they may say things like, I will put myself on the line for the sake of the mission. Now, immediately, who comes to mind to me? To me, is Martin Luther King Jr. King often spoke about his commitment to ending racial discrimination and promoting equal rights for African Americans. He acknowledged the personal risks that he would face, though, including threats to his life. He famously said, if a man hasn't discovered something that he will die for, then he isn't fit to live. This quote indicates his willingness to put his life on the line for his mission. It is the words like these that inspire the hearts of others to become followers. Our next trait now. Charismatic leaders are perceived as people who persist in spite of great odds against them. For example, Donald J. Trump persisted despite the great odds against him. He was criticized for not having a traditional political background and faced strong resistance from established political figures from within even his own Republican Party. But despite this, he was able to persist despite the great odds and was able to become the 45th president of the United States of America. Now, charismatic leaders, and this will be the third point, charismatic leaders often emerge in troubled times, whether in society or in organizations. Why? Because a strong, inspiring personality can help reduce the stress and anxiety amongst followers. Like imagine in times of some kind of uprising, people feeling anxious and nervous. But then this strong person come up in the center and say, you know what, we will get through this, we will fight. You know, you will want to follow that person. Again, Martin Luther King Jr., his powerful leadership emerged in times of difficult racial discrimination in America. Like I said, it was really bad at that point. It was to the point where African Americans weren't allowed to maybe enter certain stores, to enter stores and all that. It was getting bad. And that's when Martin Luther King emerged. So, on a business level now, when used wisely and ethically, charisma can lift the entire organization's level of performance. But how do they do this? They do this by raising people's consciousness about new possibilities and having the ability to motivate them to transcend their own interests for the sake of the team, department, or organization. So, to put that simply, these charismatic leaders, yes, they're able to lift the entire organization. But how they do this? They do this by communicating new possibilities. They say things like, we could be a bigger company. We could be a wealthy company. We could have a future. We could be the best. Telling people things like that, they'll be like, oh, okay. And then you tell them how we could become better. Also, they motivate people to stop thinking about only like maybe themselves or maybe their paycheck, maybe just their families, and tell them, guys, we could become the best coffee shop. We could become the best franchise. It makes them, want to be like, yeah, okay, let's try. So an example of this, pictured here, you'll see charismatic leader Howard Schultz. He was the former CEO of Starbucks. When he joined in 1982, Starbucks was just a small coffee bean retailer. They only sold coffee beans, no coffee, just coffee beans. And they only had 11 branches. That was 1982. He saw the potential for Starbucks to sell more than just coffee beans and actually start selling coffee as well. Scouts had a clear vision of what Starbucks could become, a third place between home and work where people could gather, connect, and enjoy high quality coffee. Under Scouts' leadership, Starbucks experienced unprecedented growth. The company went from just 11 stores in 1990 to, as I have on the slides, to having over 30,000 locations globally by 2021. Now, I put him here because he's charismatic. He was considered charismatic. Here's why. Scouts was known for being charismatic. And like an excellent charismatic leader, he was even able to get the employees to transcend their own interests and work towards the vision of the organization. But how do you get the people to actually think about, invest in the vision of the organization and not say the vision, I meant the vision, not division, not division, the vision. How do you get them to invest in the vision? He did this by building a culture of warmth and belonging. He famously referred to his employees as partners and made it a priority to create an inclusive workplace where everyone felt valued. He also made sure that they had benefits, time, he would give them bonus. He would give them everything they need so that they felt like they had enough and they didn't have to worry about paycheck, worry about getting fired. He didn't create a culture of anxiety like that. He created a culture of comfortableness, and they really liked him. They liked him a lot. He still has a lot of fans to this day. Next slide, please. So what makes a charismatic leader? Understanding charismatic leadership qualities, and so understanding their qualities and behavior can help anybody become a stronger leader, because that's what we want. We study in leadership so we could learn to become better leaders and stronger leaders. We do this by understanding. Many studies were done to identify these unique qualities of charismatic leaders. So now I'm going to compile the list and spell them out, list them out for you all. So the first one here on this slide. Charismatic leaders create an atmosphere of change and articulate an idealized vision of a future that is significantly better than what exists now. So what they do is they articulate a future. We could live better than this. We don't have to be oppressed. They articulate a future. They tell their followers that. They tell them this all the time, tell them this every day. You could see in this picture, Martin Luther King, he's telling them what he wants. He's telling them the future he believes better for African Americans. You tell people this, right? That's something that they do. That's one of their characteristics. Always articulating a vision. The next characteristic is they have an ability to communicate complex ideas and goals in clear, compelling ways so that everyone from the vice president to the janitor can understand and identify with their message. They don't speak as if they're above anybody else. They don't speak as if they're smarter than anybody else. They speak that the common man and the layperson can understand what we want, what we're going for. And that's why they amass so many followers. It's like if you have a textbook where, those textbooks where it's difficult and like you don't understand what you read it, but you don't understand it, nobody would like a textbook like that. So just like these leaders, how you really like and follow a leader, you don't really understand what he's saying. So these guys always try to be clear. A third trait about them is they tend to act in unconventional ways. Unconventional ways. Like a typical leader, like Sherian was teaching us about transactional leaders tend to play by the book. They follow a set of rules already existing, right? But these charismatic leaders, they don't play by the rules. They're very unconventional and unique. Like there would be a rule saying no protesting. What are they going to do? They are going to sit down in the middle of the street and protest if they have to. And they're going to get their followers to protest with them. They would do anything. They would pass the boundaries to get that goal. So fourthly, charismatic leaders may seem odd. Like people be like, oh, he's strange. Who he saw, boy? What? something else. No, they literally look straight. They act straight, and sometimes they look strange too. But this image only enhances their appeal. It makes you remember them. It just makes them more appealing. They go, he's different. Yeah, he cool. Um, Number 5, charismatic leaders earn followers' trust by being willing to incur great personal risk. They put themselves on the line, like I said before. They actually put themselves on the line just for the sake of the vision. Because why they're passionate about it? They are passionate about their vision. According to a personal friend of the King family, Martin Luther King received death threats against himself and his family almost every single day during the civil rights movement. And that would have been, let's say, that's like a decade of death threats every day. But he took a risk. He still continued to fight. And by taking these risks, leaders can enhance their emotional appeal to the followers. Right? That appeals to people. You feel in your heart, wow, he would put his life on the line. You would be inclined to do the same. So the last characteristic is that their influence comes from their own personal characteristics rather than from a formal position of authority. Like the way they are able to influence people to do certain things, to follow them, to protest with them, to walk with them. The way they are able to do this is from the way the person they are on the inside. Naturally, they're able to work and connect with people like that. This doesn't have anything to do with formal position, like our president. I mean, in fact, charismatic leaders may not even be in a formal position at all. They might be a peer, a neighbor, somebody. It could be anybody. Don't have to be a president or a boss. Anybody could be a charismatic leader. People just like these people. They just admire them and they respect the leader for who they are and what they stand for. It is not about position. They just want to identify with their leader and be just like him or her. Next slide, please. So I have some advice now, some recommendations, because we would like to be like these people. So although charisma itself cannot be learned, there are aspects of charismatic leadership that anyone can use. For one thing, charisma comes from pursuing activities you truly have a passion for. That's the only way you could really speak passionately and emotionally about it. It have to be something you're passionate about, like Martin Luther King fighting against racial segregation. He was passionate about that. When you're passionate, naturally, that energy and emotion will come out in your words, and people will feel it. They feel connection. People connect like that. The next piece of advice is to articulate your vision clearly. Now, you have to have a vision. You have to have one. You have to know what you want, right? Keep it simple and tell people, articulate it, tell it to others, right? Like, for example, in a group project, you would want to say, guys, we can succeed, we can do well, we can get a good grade, we can get an E. That is good. That is articulating your vision. The third one is appeal to emotions. Charismatic leaders are engaging their emotions in everyday work life, always engaging emotions. This makes them energetic, enthusiastic, and attractive to others. Their passion energizes people to jump into action. Now, last piece of advice, you need to treat others fairly. And we'll talk a bit more about this in the ethical section. You need to treat others fairly, respectfully, and communicate their importance to you, to the goal, the group, or the organization. It's good for people to feel how important they are, because they are important. Everybody is an asset. Nobody is a liability. Next slide, please. Right. This table just summarizes everything we just said about the distinguishing differences between the charismatic and the non-charismatic leaders. We talked about all of this: articulation, likableness. You got this? You all told me, yeah, likableness. They tend to be very likable. Right? Next slide, please. All right. This is an interesting slide here. The black hat of charisma. So, I'm going to ask, can you all identify these people for me, please? Does anybody know? Yeah.
The first one is Hitler.
Mm-hmm.
If I see correct. This pasta.
Jim Jones.
Who's that?
Yeah,
No,
Jim
no,
Jones.
Jimmy Jones, right? Um,
Mm-hmm.
I'm not too sure about the next two.
Mm-hmm.
Who's
Okay,
this?
yes. Mm-hmm.
Granny in class with me too for that.
That's no problem. So nobody knows who top right personally and the bottom left. Nobody?
Charles Manson.
That's right, Charles Manson. Very good. And the last guy,
Idi Amin.
very good. Yes, you all know your stuff. Yeah, so we have Adolf Hitler, Charles Manson, Idi Amin, and Jim Jones. So now that we looked at the positive characteristics of charismatic leadership, let's touch briefly on the dark side of charisma, or as DAFT puts it, the DAFT textbook, the black hat of charisma. It has been agreed by many researchers that charisma can be a blessing as well as a curse. Take, for example, leaders such as Winston Churchill, John F. Kennedy, and Mahatma Gandhi, and more recently, Barack Obama. All of them possess, display, and show tremendous charisma. But think of leaders such as Adolf Hitler, who used his charisma to manipulate masses, the cult leader Charles Manson, the butcher of Uganda, Idi Amin, and of course, the Reverend Jim Jones, who was responsible for the Jonestown Massacre, resulting in the deaths of over 900 people, men, women, and children. Now, imagine the level of charisma required, not just to kill, but to influence all these people to kill others, their families, and then themselves. In Hitler's case, consider the charisma it took to convince entire nations to side with him and determine that mass genocide of millions of people was a good idea. Next slide, please. Therefore, it is important to note that charisma isn't always used to benefit the group, organization, or society. It can also be used for self-serving purposes, which leads to deception, manipulation, and exploitation of others. Because the basis of emotional rather than logical or rational, it is risky and potentially dangerous. One explanation for this distinction. So like why are some charismatic leaders on the bad side and some on the good side? One explanation for this distinction between charisma that results in positive outcomes and negative outcomes relates to the difference between personalized leaders and socialized leaders. Now remember these terms, personalized leader and socialized, right? Remember it because we'll have to visit it again a bit later in the slide. Leaders who react to organizational problems in terms of their own needs rather than the needs of the whole often act in ways that can have disastrous consequences for others. So, right, personalized behavior is based on exploitation and caring about self, right? So these two type of charismatic leaders now is either they are socialized or personalized, right? Discussing personalized first. So the term personalized comes from person, right? Person is me, like myself, person, right? These leaders care about themselves, which doesn't turn out good because they end up deceptive, manipulative, only thinking about me and how I could benefit. The socialized ones, they socialize come from the word social, which means about others, pertaining to others, talking with others, right? These people are very selfless and supportive and tend to value others. And it is there that is the basis of the actions of the good and the not good charismatic leaders. Studies have shown that personalized charismatic leaders have a significant detrimental impact on long-term performance in an organization. So when they are in charge, you see the organization slowly declining. So if not quickly declining, slowly declining, right? until they probably become bankrupt because they keep doing underhanded things, bribery, corruption, things they should not be doing because they don't care about anybody else. They pretend they do, they don't. But when you see an organization thriving, like thriving amazingly, like Howard Schultz, the former CEO of Starbucks, as I mentioned, how it went from 11 to 30,000, that is an example of a socialized leader. That's how you know a socialized, charismatic leader was behind that one. The organization grows. I will now hand you over to my colleague, Christine, who will take us through power, influence, leadership, and different types of leader power.
Thank you, Sean. Power, influence, and leadership. Power, influence, and leadership are all intangible or non-physical forces. What does this mean? It means that they cannot be seen, tasted, or touched, but their effect or presence can be felt. Leadership. What is leadership? Leadership is the act or practice of guiding a group in a coordinated direction to achieve desired objectives or outcomes. In other words, leadership is the ability to direct or influence a group or team to pursue a shared purpose. It isn't only about giving authority or putting someone in charge. Instead, a good leader can make good decisions. They can communicate with the group effectively, cultivate a vision, and motivate their team to strive collaboratively towards that vision or ultimate goal. Good leaders are also able to make good judgments and choices with confidence, and they are able to change their leadership style adaptively, no matter the scenario. For example, in group projects at COSTAT, lecturers usually recommend that the group chooses a leader. Then the leader organizes the team, allocates duties, and makes sure everyone does their work according to the schedule. This is what helps the group to be motivated. It helps them be engaged, coordinated, and confident, and it contributes to the overall success and positive outcomes. Power. What is power? The word itself is difficult to define, as in the past, leaders or those with power have used it to corrupt extents. Hence, the definition today can have some negative implications. However, Mr. DAFT from the textbook defines it as the ability of one person or department in an organization to influence other people to bring out desired outcomes. It illustrates the power holder's capacity to cause change. It demonstrates how much pull or force they possess within a particular role or circumstance. Typically, in a company, authorities such as managers or supervisors in the upper class of the working hierarchy utilize their position of control to direct and plan the actions of employees or others in the lower class working hierarchy. Let's look at the political landscape of Trinidad and Tobago, which we are governed by the PNM party. And our Prime Minister, the Honorable Dr. Keith Rowley, as the head of the nation, he has legislative power and he makes significant decisions affecting foreign policy. He makes decisions affecting foreign policy, the economy, national governance, etc. He is an eminent example of immense power and therefore can influence the nation's people and actions. Also, the equilibrium and balance of power in our nation is also demonstrated by the control relations between the party in opposition and the ruling party, so the UNC and the PNM. Another example is the interaction between police officers and citizens. To explain, if citizens are driving on the road and they see red and blue lights in their rearview mirror, they usually pull over and they park to the side of the road without hesitance, according to instinct and according to the law. unless you're a criminal. Influence. What is influence? It is the impact of one's actions and behaviors. It is the impact that it has on other people's views, opinions, values, or beliefs. This basically implies that a person's actions or decisions have the power to influence the thoughts and feelings of others. For instance, beauty gurus or influencers, as they call them today, they have significant influence over the beauty community. How it works is that they review newly launched or popular beauty products such as blushes, eyeshadow palettes, or skincare online, and they tell their viewers all the pros and cons of the products. And therefore they influence the beauty products people buy. Typically in cases where influencers have a paid partnership and they are advertising a particular product, they may exaggerate the truth over that product or they may lie. And then this is bad because other products that are probably cheaper or probably more effective than the product they are advertising, people won't purchase them. So that's a negative. Some examples of influencers today are James Charles, Patrick Ta, Nikki Tutorials. These are all very popular beauty gurus that have significant influence over their viewers. Yes. Throughout this presentation, I will advise you to read this book. This book is called The 48 Laws of Power. It is one of the reasons that I chose to do this presentation with my group. I would advise this book to everyone who wants to gain confidence and understand the intricate details of human behavior. This book shows the unspoken guidelines and strategies that individuals frequently employ to sway, coerce, outmaneuver, outsmart one another. It also teaches you the methods for acquiring power and how you can put them into practice. So by understanding these rules, you can become intelligent and assertive, and you will be more aware of the tactics that people may employ around you. Nobody can't walk over you, in other words. You can use this in your personal life or you can use this for the workplace. So what is the difference between power and influence? Well, essentially, power is the person's ability, their pull, their force, their capacity to influence other people, whereas influence is the effect of that power. A person with power can impose norms or make choices. Um they can make decisions. They have the power to make decisions that other people can't. But the way they use that authority can affect the attitudes and actions of others. For instance, a company CEO. The CEO can impose regulations and guidelines, but their influence comes from their ability to inspire and motivate staff members. So, authority, authority is a person's capacity, and then influence is just the effect of that power, the after effect. I know we already learned who is this, but does anyone know who is this? Anybody?
Is that not Clark Kent?
Sorry?
Clark Kent.
No. This, does anybody else want to guess before I tell you?
Then now had to be Bruce Wayne then.
There's Bruce Wayne and Adolf Hitler.
Yes. Yes, this. So let's start with Adolf. This is one of the most destructive dictators in modern history. His severe anti-Semitism, by the way, if you do not know what anti-Semitism is, it is basically the hatred for Jews. His hatred for Jews, as well as his capacity to acquire political power, was the horrifying propeller to eradicate the Jewish population in Germany. And so, through spreading hateful ideas and the support, the negative charisma he had, he gained support and fostered a climate in which violence against Jews was both acceptable and justifiable. That is crazy. And that demonstrates how perilous union of strong political power and discrimination can cause catastrophic events and extensive suffering. Bruce Wayne, aka the Batman. As the CEO of Wayne Enterprises and as Batman, Bruce Wayne is a prime example of power and authority in both of his personalities. His political power is increased by his charitable endeavors, and his financial resources allow him to have a favorable economic effect on Gotham City. This is because he uses his finances and he invests it into Gotham, and he goes on all these charitable endeavors. And from all of that, the people tend to favor him. And as Batman, he represents moral authority. You all may know his well, some of you may know his slogan, which is to never kill. He also encourages people to oppose criminal activity and corruption because of his the entire Batman aura. And this shows his complex nature of power in of his personalities. All right, moving on. Position power and leadership are often two concepts that get mixed up. Position power is the degree of power associated with a formal position within an organization. For example, it can be a manager who can impose regulations. On the other hand, leadership can come from any rank in the organization, from a janitor to straight up to the CEO. It is all about motivating and inspiring people. An example of this would be an employee who inspires and encourages their colleagues. Therefore, while successful leaders can emerge from various positions, any rank within an organization, someone could remain in a position of influence without truly being a leader. There are 5 types of power: legitimate power, reward power, coercive power, expert power, and referent power. Right. As you can see in this diagram, legitimate power, reward power, and coercive power are under position power, whereas the types of power that fall under personal power are expert power and referent power. You can also see that in the space where the Venn diagram intertwines is blank. This indicates that the powers under position power and personal power, they have no shared or common qualities. Legitimate power. Legitimate power is referred to as granted power or corporate title. In other words, it is the power that comes with authorized or formal positions. An example of these positions can be managers, supervisors, CEOs. And those people in those positions, they utilize their authority to set goals, make decisions, and direct activities within a company or group. And subsequently, the subordinates or positions below that power, they follow as they are aware of the authority and punishments there can be if they don't. For example, a CEO of a company, yes, I'm using a lot of organizational examples, they have the authority to hire, fire, or grant promotions. Police officers, they have the authority to arrest a citizen because that is the power that comes with the position as a police officer. Let's go, let's take in the DC Comics, Jim Gordon. Jim Gordon is the commissioner of the GCPD, which is Gotham Central Police Department. His power comes from the position he was granted by the mayor of Gotham City. So you see, it's power that comes with the position. And he uses his power to, well, do commissioner duties. Reward power. Reward power is the authority to give rewards, incentives to employees when they follow the instructions or desires of positions higher than them. Well, essentially, it is the power granted to formal positions that can reward employees when they complete tasks and activities the way they want them to. These rewards can be tangible or intangible. You can touch it or you cannot touch it. Tangible rewards. These can be cash prizes, salary increases, bonuses, vacation days, gift cards. You can also get company merchandise, which wouldn't really do you any benefit, but some people take it. Intangible rewards can also be praise or acknowledgement for the work. So leaders with reward power usually use rewards to influence subordinates' behavior, so they get them to behave the way they want them to behave. But you cannot just offer anything. It is more likely to work if you offer something that the person will more likely want. For instance, if a school teacher tells the class that they will organize a class party or provide extra credit if the class does well on a particular exam or assignment, they are exercising that reward power. And since the students will more than likely want the reward, they will more likely put more effort in to achieve it. Coercive power. In a nutshell, this is the opposite of reward. This is punishment. Coercive power is the opposite. Instead of giving rewards, it is the authority to punish or recommend punishment. In other words, it allows the person with the coercive authority to penalize workers if they do not follow rules or complete tasks the way they are asked to. Even in school, if you don't submit your assignments on time, then you will be penalized. And in some severe cases, you can receive 0. Another example is supervisors can fire or demote employees if they do not do what they are asked to or if they don't meet performance targets. Lex Luthor as well. Lex Luthor is the enemy of Superman. He's his rival. And he uses his finances and authority to intimidate or injure anyone who disagrees with him. Expert power. A person's expertise or skill set in a given field makes them have expert power. And this disregards seniority. So whether you're older or whether you're younger, if you have expert in a particular subject, topic, whatever it is, in a particular matter, you automatically have expert power. So it is the power that someone possesses as a result of their skills, their understanding, their proficiency in a certain field. And subordinates, they follow their instructions or directions because they assume that the person knows what they are doing. However, A leader such as a CEO may lack power because subordinates know more about the technical details in the field. This is because, well, they spend more time on those tasks, so they know all the details. In a school project, again, if there's a situation during a school project, take, for example, I'm doing project management. So say there's a project where we are required to use project management software to produce a document. And more than likely, I do not know how to use it. No one else knows how to use it, but one member in the group, then that is expert power. Referent power. Referent power comes from a leader's personality characteristics. It is the authority someone has because they are respected, admired, engaged with others. And instead of official authority or knowledge, this kind of influence is frequently built on personal qualities, charisma, and relationships. For example, let's use a charismatic coach who motivates the football team with inspirational remarks. That is a prime example of referent power. So he can motivate players in order to build friendship or collaboration. And as a result, the players may become more engaged and driven, which will improve their performance as a team. So, therefore, in referent power, people tend to obey the leader's direction and instructions without question because they like how the leader treats them. They may like how they are treated. And I'll pass you on to Sherian.
Thank you, Christine. So now I will take you through to the responses of the use of power. Like Christine mentioned earlier, leaders use various types of power, right? I'll remind you again, there's legitimate, reward, coercive, expert, and referent power, right? And they use this power to influence their followers to pursue organizational goals. And the effectiveness of this influence can really result in three distinct responses from their followers, which is compliance, resistance, and commitment. So I'll just go in a little more details about these three types of responses to power. So the first one is compliance. Now, this response really occurs when followers adhere to a leader's directives, primarily due to external motivations, right? Such as the desire to avoid punishment or gain rewards. So while compliance can achieve short-term results, it often really lacks the enthusiasm and engagement necessary for long-term success, as employees may only do the minimum required. So take, for example, let's just say a government ministry announces a new policy, right, to improve public service efficiency and mandating that all the employees adhere to stricter reporting deadlines. Their response would be to comply with the new deadlines just to avoid disciplinary action or negative performance evaluation. So while they meet the requirements, their motivation is primarily to avoid penalties rather than to improve service quality. So the culture remains functional, but it really lacks enthusiasm, leading to minimal engagement with the new policy. Then there's resistance. Now, resistance arises when followers oppose or refuse to comply with a leader's request, right? So this can really stem from perception of unfairness, distrust in leadership, or misalignment of values. And resistance can manifest in overt dissent or a more subtle behavior that undermines initiatives, ultimately creating a toxic work environment and hindering progress, right? And you would see that now you're seeing on the TV, all you're seeing is the unions, they don't want to accept this, or they're threatening to shut down, or maybe teachers they protesting. I mean, we didn't see that for a long time, thank God, but these are the types of resistance you'll get. So I'll give you an example. So let me say a local company decides to implement new performance management systems, that employees feel is overly complex and time consuming. Their response would be to express their dissatisfaction openly in meetings and through informal discussions. So some may deliberately ignore the new system, and continue using the previous method. Them government places allegedly just do them thing, right? So this resistance really leads to frustration among management, and it slows down the implementation process. And that creates a divide between leadership and staff. So team morale really diminishes as employees feel their concerns are really not being heard. And then the last type of response is commitment. Now, commitment represents the most desirable outcomes, right? Where followers really fully embrace the leader's vision and intrinsically motivated to contribute to the organizational goals. Now, this response leads to higher levels of engagement, initiative, and collaboration, fostering a positive organizational culture and sustainable success. Again, a nonprofit organization, they focus on community development and they introduce new initiatives to aim at improving youth education and mentorship, right? The response would be that employees and volunteers will fully embrace this initiative, right? Recognizing its alignment with their personal values and the organization's mission. So they actively contribute to ideas, they participate in planning sessions, and they go beyond their typical roles just to ensure the initiative's success. So this commitment really fosters a collaborative environment, enhances community impact, and strengthens the organization's reputation, ultimately attracting more support and resources. So that was the three types of responses to the use of power. I now take you on to the next presenter, Christine.
Thank you, Sharian. The role of dependency. Dependency is the state in which people or groups depend on one another for information, resources, or assistance. In other words, it is a situation where a person relies on another person for something. That is it in a gist. Now, previously, we learned that power is the person's capacity to influence others. However, when a person has control or authority over something that someone else desires or needs, they automatically gain power. Let's use student A and B, for example. Imagine a math class where student A is struggling to understand, so she regularly turns to student B, who is great at math, to explain concepts and guide her through the homework. This shows dependency, where student A is dependent on student B. And well, student B gains power because she has something that student A wants. In this case, that is expert power as well. So what I am trying to say is that power is a component or element of dependency. In the business world, when unemployment levels are high and job opportunities are scarce, people depend on company leaders for jobs, in that these formal leaders have what the individuals would want, which is money for their livelihood. So the organizational leaders automatically gain the upper hand or power. Whereas on the other hand, when unemployment is low and job opportunities are abundant or plentiful, employees have the ability, they have the not the ability, they would rely on employees because they keep the company running smoothly and get tasks done easier. So the burden doesn't fall on the leaders. And well, some employees are hard to replace. And in this case, employees gain power. For example, within retail establishments, management is dependent on employees to guarantee seamless, smooth operations and high quality customer service. And on the other hand, workers rely on their managers or the company leaders to provide them with guidance, tools, and assistance they need to carry out their jobs as well. Control over resources. The idea of control over resources usually relates to a leader's capacity to oversee and distribute important organizational resources, including funds, people, technology, information. To put it in another way, having control over resources gives a leader the authority to determine how crucial elements like funds, personnel, and equipment are utilized inside a business or group. And because they decide how these resources are allocated to achieve organizational objectives, resource controlling leaders frequently hold considerable power and influence. So, as seen in this diagram, it is basically a summarization of what I just said. If a leader has lower power, then they probably don't have control over something that dependencies want, and they automatically have lower power. But if they hold higher power, then they may have control over something dependencies do want or desire, resulting in higher power. For example, Petrotrin's handling of Trinidad and Tobago's oil and gas reserves. This gives it considerable power over the country's resources. And the company, they have a dominant position in the local economy, thanks to the distribution system and refining capability, which allow it to deliver essential petroleum products. And not to mention, the oil is essential in both local, so it is essential down here, and in foreign markets, so it is essential in other countries as well, all other countries. And this enhances and elevates the company's dominance as it has resources that other nations want. And this gives it power and leverage in trade negotiations. I now pass you on to Sean.
Thank you, Christine. So I'm going to talk about sources of leader power. So Christine discussed different types of leader power, right? Different types of like power a leader may have. But there are actually additional sources of leader power. Like, okay, so the 5 types discussed before are derived from either a formal position of leadership or the leader's personal qualities within themselves. They're getting power from either their position or what's the person they are, right? But in organizations, however, additional sources of power and influence have been identified. The first is interdepartmental dependency. So, to explain this simply, interdepartmental dependency just says that in an organization, imagine all the departments, they coexist, right? So, and materials and resources, information, these things move in one direction from department at the top to department at the end product, to produce an end product. So imagine a train track, and imagine each department is like a different stop along the way. The first department at the top will send out resources to the next one and the next one. So let's say like the supply department will send out their output to the manufacturing department, which will send out their output to the packaging department and then end product. Now, you see, because organizations are set up like this, what's going to happen is that the department that at the beginning is the one that is actually sending out the resources, he is going to have more power than the one receiving the resources. Let me give an example. So like in a hospital lab, right? You would think that the lab would be the one with a lot of power because doctors can't prescribe medication or perform surgeries until they get results of the patient from the lab. So you would think the lab have that power, right? You'd be surprised. The one who actually holds the power in this case would be the supplies department. If purchasing and inventory department, if they can't supply the lab with what they need to actually be able to run these tests for the patient, then nothing is happening. The lab can't even do anything. At doctors, nobody could do anything. We just waited around. They would be the ones with the power because they are providing. So another source of power that a leader could have, like where else this leader could have power? Control over information. This means that in, like, let's say a company where information is being accessed by different departments, the one who holds certain information, specific, important information, the department and the leader that have access to that, he is going to have a lot of power. Let me give an example. So like in a marketing research department, right? Let's say a clothing brand or maybe a clothing company like maybe Gucci, where marketing is the name of the game. This means that the marketing research department will hold all the power. Depending on the information released by that market research department, the CEO will steer the company's directions to suit it. For example, if the market research team says fluorescent, bright colored, oversized jackets are trending, bet your bottom dollar that CEO is going to get the whole company creating those types of jackets right then and there. So in this case, the leader of that market research department has the power to influence decisions. Next slide, please. So another way a leader could gain power in an organization or have power would be organizational centrality. Now, I know these words, they're a bit long, but it's very simple concepts. Organizational centrality reflects a leader or department's ability, their role in the primary activities of an organization. So in an organization, everybody have activities, right? But depending on how important your activity is to the end product, is the amount of power you will have. The more important you are, the more power you have. A prime example of this is, let's say, a company like Intel, like Dell, Intel. They are heavily technology oriented. Here, engineers and the leader of the engineering department possess a high degree of power. This is because the organization depends on them to maintain its technical superiority in products. This will contrast to, let's say, in a company like, again, like a clothing company, where marketing is the marketing department is the kings. Engineer, like the engineers there, the engineering department there, they wouldn't have much power at all. Not like the marketing team. The CEO actually sit and wait for the marketing team to talk. So the last one is coping with uncertainty. Right. So this world is unpredictable, and many things just happen that could kind of throw off an organization's path or kind of interfere possibly with their success. But there are departments that actually able to work and actually able to cope with it. They can actually know how, okay, I know how to get us out of this. I know exactly what to do so we wouldn't suffer and go bankrupt or anything like that. Let me give an example. During the COVID-19 pandemic, the Ministry of Health had a lot of power because they possessed the knowledge and know-how to be able to cope with the uncertainty brought about by the pandemic. If you think at that time, like everybody, the Ministry of Health, the Mr. Terrence they are saying, these people had power. They would be able to restrict the movements of the population. They'll tell people you should do this and you shouldn't do that. Everybody, the government, the prime minister, everybody was waiting for word from this Ministry of Health to hear what to do next. Because they are the ones pretty much saving the country from disaster, right? They still have a lot of power in that regard because health is very important. Next slide, please. Right, this is what I was just explaining. There are 4 sources of power that a leader could get, other than what was mentioned before. These are the 4 sources of power. Some leaders have all, some see that leaders have 1, some have 2. But the more of these that they have control over, the more important they are, the more powerful they would be in an organization, the more power they would have to make the calls, to make decisions, to call the shots, right? To direct the organization's entire trajectory. Next slide, please. I will now hand it over to my colleague Sherry-Ann, who will take us through increasing power through political activity.
Thank you, Sean. Okay, so let me give you a definition of what political activity means. So it's political activity in an organization really refers to the actions and behaviors individuals or groups engage in to influence decision-making processes, gain resources, or enhance their status within the organization. Leaders and employees, often use political strategies to increase their power and effectiveness. Next slide, please. So here's an overview of how political activity can enhance power in an organizational context. So the first one is building alliances and networks. What does that mean? It means forming relationships with colleagues, stakeholders, and other influential figures within the organization. And their strategies would be to attend social events, meetings, and informal gatherings to meet and connect with others, collaborate on projects that would allow for shared goals and mutual benefits. Now, the impact of this would be strong networks can provide support, information, and resources, which can increase an individual's influence and ability to mobilize others. So the next one is strategic communication. This is effectively conveying ideas, concerns, and achievements to key stakeholders, right? Their strategies is to use persuasive language to present ideas and proposals in a compelling manner, right? So they tailor their messages to resonate with different audiences, like the upper management versus their peers. And the impact of this would be effective communication can really enhance credibility, promote visibility, and foster trust, making it easier for them to gain support for initiatives. Then we have understanding organizational politics. Now, this means that recognizing the informal power dynamics and the interests of various stakeholders within the organization, right? And their strategies would be to observe and analyze the behaviors of influential individuals and groups, and then they would identify key makers and understand their motivations and priorities. And the impact of that would be by navigating the political landscape effectively, individuals can align their efforts with the goals of powerful stakeholders, increasing their chances for success. Then there's advocating for change. This means actively promoting ideas or initiatives that can lead to organizational improvements. And the strategies would be to gather data and evidence to support proposed changes, demonstrating their potential benefits. They mobilize allies to advocate collectively, amplifying the message and demonstrating widespread support. And the impact would be a successful advocacy can really position individuals as thought leaders and decision makers, enhancing their power and influence within the organization. Then there's demonstrating value and competence. This is consistently delivering results and showcasing expertise in relevant areas, right? And these strategies would be to take on challenging projects and exceed expectations to establish a track record of success, to share knowledge and mentor others, positioning oneself as a go-to resource in the organization. And the impact would be demonstrating this competence really builds reputation and respect, leading to increased influence and opportunities for advancement. The other one is navigating conflicts and challenges. Now, this means when you're managing disagreements and obstacles, in a way that it maintains relationships and it promotes collaboration. And the strategy for this would be to use negotiations and conflict resolution skills to find win-win solutions and to stay composed and professional in the face of challenges, which really demonstrating that emotional intelligence. And the impact on this will be, effectively handling conflicts can really enhance credibility and foster a reputation as a constructive leader, thereby increasing power. So, in all, increasing power through political activity really involves a combination of strategic networking, effective communication, and understanding organizational dynamics. And by engaging in these kinds of activities, individuals can really enhance their influence and promote their ideas and navigate the complexities of workplace relationships more effectively. So ultimately, leveraging political activity can really lead to a greater opportunities for leadership, collaboration, and success within the organization. So I now pass you on to the next presenter, Christine.
Thank you, Sharian. Tactics for asserting power. There are 7 tactics. Use rational persuasion. Make people like you. Rely on the rule of reciprocity. Develop allies. Ask for what you want. Remember the rule of scarcity. And use formal authority with expertise and credibility. Use rational persuasion. This is the most commonly used tactic to gain influence over people. It essentially involves using facts, statistics, and logical arguments to back up a statement and persuade others that a suggested course of action is the most effective method to achieve a goal. This strategy works well in a variety of contexts, including persuading team members, co-workers, or managers, since people tend to trust facts and logic. Specifically, suppose an individual has technical knowledge on a certain topic. In that case, subordinates tend to follow as they trust their credibility, as not all information can be backed up by facts and logic. For example, Batman frequently uses logistical argumentation to convince other heroes in Justice League comics. For example, when the team wants to confront Darkseid, he provides logistics and analytics on their past battles with Darkseid while determining whether to face him. And doing so, Batman helps the team comprehend the value of having a strategic battle plan rather than jumping in headfirst. So he backs up his statements. And his knowledge in battle, his knowledge and expertise, they make the others trust him as well. Make people like you. This is another commonly used tactic for asserting power. In fact, many people use it in the workplace unconsciously. People are more inclined to assist and favor leaders who demonstrate that they care for them, respect everyone equally, and they gain their trust. So a leader who encourages people and makes them feel important, they create an inviting atmosphere. And this demonstrates the powerful impact that sincere gratitude and admiration can have on relationships. For example, there was a story in the DAFT textbook about an American working in Saudi Arabia. He spoke how he found it was relatively simple to get information from the government offices once he sat down for tea and chatted for a while. This point highlights how a warm and respectful approach in the workplace can help people communicate better and how people are more inclined to embrace or favor someone with whom they get along with. So look at that. Look how simple it is to get information from government offices confidential information by simply having a welcoming attitude and sitting and having tea. Look how simple. Rely on the rule of reciprocity. The rule of reciprocity basically means the rule of exchange. You've probably heard the word reciprocate in mathematics, where you reciprocate or exchange the fraction. This rule is unwritten. It is not a predetermined or a determined law. It is an unwritten rule that means that if you do favors for people, you can expect them to do favors for you in return, or vice versa. This is because kindness tends to foster a sense of equilibrium or balance, which makes people want to return that favor. So using reciprocity, using this approach can motivate people to comply or support a request after you first show them consideration or assistance. For example, imagine a manager. A manager comes and gives coffee to their staff during a hectic workday. Because the first act of kindness creates an impression of duty, the team will feel more inclined to put in more effort in their work or go the extra mile in return. Or if a classmate helps you with an assignment, then you may feel more inclined to help that classmate when they later ask for assistance on their assignment. This is because due to that, the first act of kindness that they do for you, you will feel like, oh, I have to repay that act of kindness. So you feel a sense of obligation to return the favor. Develop allies. The rule of reciprocity is a component of developing allies, in that it plays a major role in forming friends through acts of kindness. In order to accomplish objectives, leaders must build a network of supporters, which involves creating dependable connections and building power through collaboration and trust. However, if the power is seen as self-serving, then resentment may result. For example, there was a situation where the companies Morgan Stanley and Dean Witter were going to merge. They were merging. So during this merger, Philip Purcell from Dean Witter, he appointed himself as CEO. And well, the others from the other company in the merger, Morgan Stanley, they didn't fight him. They let him have it. And then they said that a few years after, then they will appoint someone from their company to be CEO. But that's besides the point. Now, when Philip became CEO, he appointed his people from his company in Dean Witter into important positions during the merger. Only his people. And he excluded workers from the Morgan Stanley. And he made decisions without telling them. And he was just basically concentrating too much on accumulating power. And because of this, he lost the trust of Morgan Stanley and its staff and stakeholders. And this resulted in internal disputes in the company, internal disagreements, and he was later forced to resign from his position. Ask for what you want. This strategy is essentially clearly stating and defining what it is you want. In other words, it is describing your desires explicitly rather than indirectly, or expecting that the other person would automatically understand what you mean. This makes it easy for the other person to reply because they are fully aware of what you are asking or requesting, and this increases the chances of a more positive outcome. In many cases, the proposal is accepted because there may be no other options, or because the other options are not clearly defined. For example, group projects. Again, in group projects, leaders clearly define what they want by clearly stating deadlines for submission, as well as assigning clear rules and responsibilities that everyone is aware of and understands. And by doing this, it ensures the likelihood of a more positive outcome. Also, even if there is any change to group plans, you should directly address and talk to the group members instead of assuming that they would just know what to do. Remember the rule of scarcity. You may have heard the word scarcity in economics, which means the state of shortage or things being scarce. Now, it is human nature to want things, and when things are scarce, it is human nature to want more. So the principle of scarcity entails influencing others by establishing a feeling of urgency or emphasizing the limited supply of a resource, opportunity, or choice. And people tend to value things more when they think things are uncommon or difficult to get. So a leader may exert authority or sway choices by managing access to that limited resource. For example, a manager could tell his staff, I have exclusive knowledge that a special incentive will only be given to the first 3 individuals who meet their sales goals at the end of this month. This is a unique chance that won't come around very often. And by portraying it as insider information, the manager instills a feeling of urgency and scarcity in the team members, giving them the impression that they are exposed to something unique that others are not. And this will motivate them to put in more effort to get the reward. Extend formal authority with expertise and credibility. This concept means that a leader may successfully influence people because of their legitimate power and position inside the organization. Like we learned earlier, legitimate power. But in order to properly use this concept, they need to be informed, reliable, and trustworthy. Not to mention, leaders who successfully gain from this principle are open, honest, and blunt with employees. And they also integrate the previous 6 principles into this concept. Consider a sales manager at a software company. Let's call her Brenda. Now, let's imagine that Brenda notices that a particular team is having trouble closing deals. Now, instead of just issuing orders and telling them to fix it themselves or insulting them, she brainstorms with them. She sits down and brainstorms with them to help them figure out the challenges in their pitches. You see how this integrates with the other principles? Think about it. And by exchanging valuable information and encouraging team collaboration, Brenda shows her expertise and authority, and this will inspire the group to actively participate in problem solving in the present and in the future. I now pass you on to Sean.
Thank you, Christine. Okay, so ethical considerations in power and politics. You know, if we're talking about power, you know, we have to talk about ethics. We have to. So, pictured here, Harry Truman, the 33rd President of the United States, once said, leadership is the ability to get people to do what they don't want to do and like it. Now, this statement raises an important issue. That is, although leadership is an opportunity to use power and influence to accomplish significant goals, power can also be abused. Unfortunately, in many organizations, there are individuals who use their power to cater to their own self-interests at the expense of others and the organization. Before I go to the next slide, does anybody remember about personalized and socialized leaders? Okay, so I have a question. What was a personalized leader? If if anybody remember. You want to remember? That is okay. No problem. I will tell you. Personalized leaders. Well, we'll talk about it on the next slide. Next slide, please. Okay, so recall that personalized leaders. Personalized leaders are very selfish, impulsive, and exercise power for their own interests rather than the good of the organization. In contrast, socialized leaders exercise power in the service of higher goals that will benefit others and the organization as a whole. The table to the right shows the characteristics of the ethical and the unethical leader. But actually, we could say it's the characteristics of the socialized and the personalized leader. So, to summarize this, I think we discussed quite a bit of this already. But the ethical leader tends to, okay, they're about fairness, they're about fulfilling commitments, and they're very, very honest with their team. The unethical leader tends to be deceptive. They're always breaching agreements, they don't keep their word. And the worst to me is that they blame other people. They actually blame the employees when something goes wrong. I don't think you should blame the employees. Well, if it's their fault, I think the leader needs to take responsibility. If it's not their fault, don't blame others to save yourself. Because to me, if they get found out that it was actually their fault as a leader, it'll be way worse for them. Okay, next slide, please. So for now, I just want to discuss one point on this slide. You see that first point? According to the DAFT textbook, there is one particular area in organizations where there is concern regarding unethical use of power. That is sexual harassment. People and organizations depend on one another, especially their leaders, for many resources, including information, cooperation, and even matters pertaining to their job. Any increases, if they have to write an appraisal, the employee is dependent on the supervisor or the leader, whoever the leader is of that department. Now, when access to these resources seem to depend on granting favors or putting up with intimidating or inappropriate comments, the person in the dependent position feels powerless and is being personally violated. And even then, sometimes the leader still withhold everything from them, withhold what they want. Luckily, many organizations are developing policies and procedures tailored around protecting individuals from harassment in the workplace. These policies offer avenues and procedures for reporting complaints. So to update this, because I wanted to see if it's changed, because this textbook was released in 2008, statistics showed that there has been a 41% decline in sexual harassment at the workplace. Now, I believe much of this is in part thanks to the popularity of social media and persons sharing their concerns online. For example, recently, I believe there was a Me Too movement where everyone was sharing situations that made them feel uncomfortable. So there's more I would like to discuss on this slide. So I'll return to this slide soon. Can we go to the next slide for now? So this slide here, you see it highlights and summarizes some criteria that could guide ethical actions, because sometimes you're not too sure if what they're doing is really, if it will really harm others or how unethical it is. So what a leader could do is follow this guideline, starting from the first question. Once they could answer that, then they could proceed to answer the rest. The first question is my action motivated by self-interest, or is it consistent with the organization's goals? Once you answer that, you can answer the rest. And it is important, though, that the leader answers these questions very honestly, because in the end, they'll be able to result with an ethical choice, nothing that could get them or anybody else in trouble. Next slide, please. Actually, return to the last slide. Sorry. Return. Yeah, thank you. So going back to this slide, there's some important notes here. The most important thing is for leaders to be aware of is of the ethical responsibilities that come with having power, and to be mindful of using that power to help rather than to harm others. Instead of thinking about getting their own way, leaders should focus on building long-term productive relationships that can achieve goals and benefit the organization. Okay, next slide, please. Next slide again. Right. As we come to the end of our presentation, I would like to recap a few points. Today, we discussed the various types of power and the forms of influence. We highlighted their sources, characteristics, and effectiveness. We can identify individuals considered to have power or to be leaders with influence. We emphasize the use of power and politics by leaders to achieve their goals, noting a variety of influence tactics, including rational persuasion, likability, reciprocity, developing allies, direct appeal, scarcity, and formal authority. It was also highlighted how important it is for leaders to use power and politics ethically and responsibly, serving the organization's goals, respecting the rights of individuals and groups, and striving for fairness. So now we know that power and politics are essential parts of leadership, but they must, and I mean must, be used carefully. I encourage you to use the principles of ethical leadership to guide your use of power and politics. When you use your power wisely, you can make a positive difference, both internally and externally within your organization. Next slide, please. These are all our lovely references. Okay, class, that brought us to the end of our presentations. Are there any questions? Well, if there are no questions, next slide.
I don't have like much questions, so to say, but like I really enjoyed the presentation. I love the use of the comics. I love the length. It was really long. It had a lot to unpack, but it was
Yeah.
fun. It was really it was amazing. Like hats off to all of you. It was a great presentation.
Wow, thank you so much. Oh, a heart. Oh, thank you so much. I should have said any questions or comments. That was so kind. Thank you. Appreciate it. We really work hard. We wanted to teach you all. We wanted to teach you all to really understand it. It's such an important chapter. Okay, class. Thank you so much for listening. Thank you, sir. Thank you.